Hello and welcome back to Five Dolls in a House by Helen Clare, and we're at my favourite chapter at long last. It's called The Duchess Comes to Dinner, and it's chapter 9. Elizabeth had found 4 tiny candles left over from a birthday cake. She had sharpened the ends with a penknife so they would go into Vanessa's best brass candlesticks. They were pale green candles and would look very grand indeed on the polished table in the dolls' dining room. She skipped up to the door, seeing the monkey on the roof as usual. "Company expected here," he said, with a grin. "They're in a nice old whirl." "Oh," said Elizabeth, "what kind of company?" "Grand company," said the monkey gravely. Elizabeth had no time to reply before the door was opened, and all the dolls crowded out at once in a pile. "Oh, Mrs. Small! Oh, you'll never guess! It's so exciting, we can't wait!" "The fact is, Mrs. Small," said Vanessa, "that the Duchess is coming to dinner." And she nodded her head excitedly until the feather danced a jig. "Vanessa, is it one of the Duchesses you said you knew?" "Well, come in, Mrs. Small, and you shall see. I'm not quite sure whether I know this one or not." "But surely she wouldn't come if you didn't know her?" began Elizabeth. "There's no knowing what duchesses will do. Besides, it may be someone who knows my father. I'll read you the letter." "I found it," said Amanda, "in the parlour grate." "Yes, it's most strange, but the letter, instead of coming through the letterbox, as most letters do, came down the chimney, Mrs. Small," Vanessa whispered. "We can't think why, unless it's a special thing that duchesses do. But supposing we had a fire, you know, perhaps the postman climbed up for fun." "It may have blown up there," suggested Lupin. "So it may, so it may. Very sensible, Lupin," said Vanessa. "It must be meant for us," explained Jane anxiously, "because it's got Vanessa's name on. Spelt wrong, but we'll forgive her, as she's a duchess. She probably doesn't have time to go to school." "Lucky thing," said Amanda. "Well, I don't think it could be meant for the crumpets or the browns, as it has my name on," Vanessa continued, opening the note, "and inside it says, 'Dear Orr.' Very friendly, isn't it? 'Dear Orr, I shall be coming to dine with you today, so please expect me when you see me. Yours affectionately, the Duchess.' Of course, she really means, 'Please see me when you expect me,' I should think, because when you see someone, well, there's no need to expect them. However, here have we been expecting her all day and hoping she wouldn't come until we're ready. Doubtless she means late dinner, not nursery dinner, so we've had the whole day." "But Vanessa," said Elizabeth, "doesn't it say the Duchess of something?" "It's just signed the Duchess," said Vanessa, looking at the letter again. "So, as far as I can see, though I haven't my spectacles. And would there be a Duchess of something, Mrs. Small? It's a rather strange thing to be a Duchess of, isn't it? Now, if it were cranberry or dumpling or crumpet—" Elizabeth laughed. "That's what I meant," she said. "Well, it's not what you said," said Vanessa, rather sternly. "You distinctly said the Duchess of something. And the fact remains that whatever this good lady is Duchess of, she's coming. And we're very busy cooking and getting ready. What with those young horses and now this, I have had my hands full. Come along, dear Mrs. Small," she went on, leading the way to the kitchen. "We hope you'll stay and meet the Duchess too." "I should love to," said Elizabeth. "We're doing a lot of cooking," said Jane. "It's such fun." "I'm chopping things up," said Amanda. "I'm stirring," said Lupin. "Where's Jacqueline?" "Oh, that paying guest. Well, we think she must be in her room putting on her best things. She hasn't offered to help, except she's going to write the menu out in French. All the things we're having to eat, you know," explained Vanessa. There's a little picture here of, do you know, I've forgotten who's who. It's either Amanda or Lupin stirring. And then the little cat there that they got in another episode. Lost my place. The dolls were having a wonderful time. At the kitchen table, Amanda chopped and chopped at some leaves and grass with a blunt knife. All the knives need sharpening, Mrs. Small, but it's safer for Amanda anyway. There were 2 large saucepans on the range, which Lupin stirred with the same spoon, first one, then the other. Soup, explained Vanessa, made with brown paint and delicious carrot chopped up by Amanda. Lupin will keep tasting it, so I only hope there'll be some left. And potatoes in the other pan. We're having sponge pudding and chocolate sauce, said Jane. For one thing, it's in this basin. Elizabeth looked. It was a sand pudding with mud on top. I'm chopping the parsley for the envelope, explained Amanda. You mean omelette? We mean one of those large things made in a frying pan of eggs, which you fold over, and that's why it's called an envelope. Or envelope, if you choose, said Vanessa firmly. Oh, this kitten, it gets under my feet, she said crossly. Go on your cushion. But the velvet kitten continued to prance round, very much enjoying everyone being in the kitchen and catching for tastes from all in turn. It likes the soup best, said Lupin, giving it a spoonful behind Vanessa's back. Oh, I quite forgot to say, said Elizabeth, noticing that she was still holding the packet of candles, that I brought you this. Oh, Mrs. Small, how delightful! Just the right day, for we've quite run out of candles, though some more are ordered. And they will go in the brass candlesticks on the dining table. Oh, most genteel. Jane, if you finish that pudding, you can go and lay the table. We'll have the gold plates as she's a duchess. Have you got any gold plates, Vanessa? Well, as a matter of fact, they're brass. They go with the candlesticks, but you can't tell the difference. It's the same colour, you know, Vanessa whispered. Jane put the sand sponge in the oven and ran to lay the table. Elizabeth went with her. She had filled the 2 vases on the mantelpiece with small grass blades for flowers. Vanessa says you don't have a cloth for dinner, she said, just mats. Here are the plates, only 4. The rest will have to be the tin ones. They fitted the candles into their sticks and stood them on the table, one each side of the bowl of fruit. The table looked very grand. We'll have all the food on the sideboard, Vanessa said, coming in at that moment with a very yellow omelette. Yellow paint and flour, as we had no fresh eggs, she whispered, because we don't want to keep running into the kitchen with the Duchess here, and we unfortunately have no servants to wait on us. If only I could persuade that monkey to be a butler or a footman and hand the plates round. Have you asked him? Yes, he says he's going out. He never goes out, you know, so it's all nonsense. He's being spiteful. And Vanessa dumped the omelette down hard. Lupin came in with the soup in its saucepan. Oh, goodness gracious, we can't give the Duchess soup out of a saucepan at a table, can we, Mrs. Small? But unhappily, there isn't a soup thing. What about the teapot? Suggested Elizabeth. Oh, that's a very good idea, Vanessa agreed. Perhaps she won't recognise it. Lupin removed the rent from the teapot, put it in her mouth, and poured the soup in. The carrots will get stuck in the spout, she remarked. Well, all the better. We don't want to give her great lumps of carrot. Not at all genteel. And you shouldn't eat rent before dinner. Now, come along. Vanessa went on when it was all ready. We must dress, you know. I don't think Lupin and Amanda are old enough to sit up to dinner, really. Vanessa! They wailed. But I shall let them this once, she finished. All the dolls dressed themselves in the longest and finest things in the scrapbox. There were a great many ribbons and flowers and brooches and even more pins to hold them together. Vanessa took off her hat and wound the blue ribbon round her head to keep her hair on. The strange thing is, she remarked, that I seem to have mislaid that white silk evening cloak of mine with tassels. It's really an old counterpane. Never mind. Will she come in a carriage? Asked Jane. I expect so. I wish we had a footman. That monkey, he's very quiet today, I must say. Perhaps he has gone out, as he said. Ah, here's the paying guest. I wouldn't let her come, only her dress looks rather genteel, said Vanessa. Oh, I did her voice there. Said Vanessa, as Jacqueline came down the blue stair carpet last. Does the Duchess arrive? She asked. Oh, not yet. And you mean, has she arrived? We're all waiting. They stood in a bunch in the parlour in their fine clothes, Elizabeth feeling as excited as the rest. Then there was a knock at the door, a loud, unladylike knock. Amanda and Lupin clutched each other and squealed. Jane blushed. Jacqueline whispered something in French, but Vanessa patted her hair and marched boldly downstairs, while Elizabeth held her breath. "Come in, dear Duchess," she began, opening the door. "We are delighted to see you. It is charming of you to call. We are all ready, and you couldn't have come at a better moment." And in stepped a very dressed-up lady indeed. "Good evening, all," she said in a high, squeaky voice. "I have left my carriage in the drive." "Quite right," said Vanessa. "And I'm very glad I've come," she squeaked, shaking hands with them all in turn. The dolls were looking rather surprised, and even Vanessa forgot her manners and stared. The Duchess wore several long dresses, all on top of each other, a cloak, ribbons round her waist, fawn mittens on her hands, and a most dangerous-looking headdress of silks and bubbles and fringes, rather like a lampshade. Her face was very white in places, very pink in others, and quite brown underneath. She also had spectacles. "Oh, most genteel," whispered Vanessa to Jane, "except for the spectacles. I've never known a duchess wear those." "I see you have the latest picture of Her Majesty," squeaked the Duchess, looking at the halfpenny stamp. "Indeed we have," said Vanessa. "And how is Her Majesty?" she went on politely. "Very well, and she sent you her kind regards," squeaked the Duchess. "Oh, how genteel of her. We are honoured. Jane, run and light the candles if you're ready. Duchess, I'll go and have dinner." "Not half," said the Duchess, rather quickly, and made a dive for the parlour door. Vanessa looked a little surprised, and lifted her eyebrows at Elizabeth. Amanda and Lupin giggled, and the procession moved down to the dining room. "Perhaps I ought to explain," she squeaked, as they all sat down drinking their soup, "that why my face is so many different colours in patches is because I've just had a holiday in the south of France and got very sunburnt." She took off her spectacles. "Yes, I see," said Vanessa. "How genteel." "The paying guest here comes from France, though what part I couldn't say. And did you have good weather?" she went on. "Not a drop of rain the whole time," said the Duchess, whose voice had suddenly gone quite gruff. Jane was so startled that she dropped her knife and fork. They were eating the envelette. "Oh, you must excuse my voice," squeaked the Duchess, "but it got quite sore in the south of France, due to the dust and not being any rain, and it sometimes goes husky." "Oh, how very unfortunate," said Vanessa, whose eyes were upon the Duchess's cloak. It was a white silk one with tassels. Elizabeth was wondering why the Duchess did not take her gloves off. Those mittens reminded her of something. She whispered about the gloves to Jane as they brought the pudding. "Perhaps duchesses never do," said Jane. The Duchess was eating busily all the time, making remarks with her mouth full, sometimes in the squeaky voice and sometimes in the gruff one. "We had your letter all right," said Vanessa, "but how very odd that it should be delivered down the chimney." "Special airmail service," said the Duchess gruffly. "Only for duchesses. Helicopter drops them straight down the chimblies." I see," Vanessa was beginning when there was a splutter from Amanda. She could keep her giggles in no longer. She lay back in her chair and giggled and choked and spluttered until she was quite red in the face. "Really, Amanda, you must excuse her, Duchess. She's very young. Would you like to see a picture of them seated at the table?" And the Duchess. There's a little bit of a clue here. There you go. Can you see the Duchess with the hat like a lampshade on her head? I don't know about you. She looks a bit familiar to me. What do you think? "What is it?" whispered Lupin, giggling too. "Do be quiet," said Jane anxiously. The paying guest began to laugh as well. "Oh, said Amanda. "Can't you see? I know who it is. Oh, Vanessa, this is small," she gasped. "It's not a duchess at all. It's the monkey." And she laughed until she rolled off her chair. The Duchess rose hastily to her feet and said she must go, and ran for the front door. "Oh!" screamed all the dolls together. "Good gracious, Mrs. Small, I do believe Amanda is right for once. Did you ever hear of such a thing? Duchess indeed, and wearing my evening clothes, rude animal. No wonder her face was so many colours. And her hands, said Jane. I couldn't understand it. Well, anyway, said Elizabeth, it was a lovely dinner, and I enjoyed myself. Yes, and so did I, admitted Vanessa. To think that monkey walked in here. Had you all nicely, didn't I? Squeaked a voice down the chimney. Anyway, shouted Vanessa, you couldn't be a duchess, you ignorant animal. Being a man, you'd be a duke, of course. Oh, I'm a duke, then. Well, a duke wouldn't wear a hat like that, so you're wrong either way, she snapped. Come along, bedtime, she said to the dolls. Oh dear, Mrs. Small, I'm so glad you enjoyed it. Oh, wasn't it fun? Sighed Amanda. Thank you for the candles, said Jane. They made it lovely. Goodbye, goodbye, come along, Lupin. Bedtime, Vanessa sang halfway up the stairs. Goodbye, called Elizabeth, and thank you for having me. The monkey was on the roof again as she walked away, and still wearing the huge hat. Ha ha ha, he said. You are a disgraceful animal, said Elizabeth, though she couldn't help laughing at him. Did you guess it was the monkey too, or did you think it was a real duchess? What did you think? I love that chapter. I remember reading it to my children when they were small, and the moment they guessed it, and they were both laughing and laughing, just like Amanda. So that chapter always gives me very happy memories. Before I go, a very happy birthday to Lindy. This one's for you. I think about half of them have been for you, but this one's especially for you. Hope you had a great day. Bye-bye.